Let's take a look inside DaVinci Resolve by Blackmagic Design. For this presentation, we'll be looking at how I assembled the pieces of Carrera renders to create Introducing Rosie 5. Now, I'm still new to DaVinci, so I specifically designed the intro scene to test myself on some of the things I've learned about Fusion and DaVinci Resolve. It's just a basic tiptoe into the software to get this ball rolling. Here in the edit page we see D'Artanbek, but not the scene he's in when he approaches us. This was a fun experiment. I've done these things before in PD Howler, which is also fun, but this would be my first time doing this in Fusion. In order to see what's going on, we need to get into Fusion. But first, check out how this all works. On the left here, we have our media pool. This is where we gather all of the elements we need to make the movie. We can simply drag in folders and the media pool will automatically turn nested folders into bins. We can make our own bins on the fly to better organize ourselves. This is helpful since I have so many short clips that have numbers and strange nomenclature for file names. If I go here to my intro bin, I recognize a special render I did for this experiment called Intro Scene Markor, which is the name of the spaceship I use. This one on the right is a still image of the last frame in the sequence to the left. This is an image sequence even though we see it as a single file. Let's double click that and bring it into the left-hand viewer and see what's going on here. What this is a scene that I've created inside the spaceship. When I made the animation for D'Artanbek approaching us to introduce Rosie, I animated the camera as he walks, talks, and turns out of the scene. I copied that filming camera and pasted it into this scene and rendered it separately. The still image on the right is to allow for the scene to extend as long as I need it to after he leaves. I wanted to see D'Artanbek in the timeline, so I dropped his animation in here rather than the background scene. Let's jump into Fusion. Just click on the Fusion page down here. This is the final composite shot as you see on YouTube. This is a Fusion workflow and it's incredibly easy and fun to do, but it's also very powerful. How does it all work? In Fusion, everything we want to do to the original image is done with its own separate node. The background node is usually exactly what is dropped into the timeline, and the media out node is what appears in the final output throughout every page in DaVinci. So we don't have to make more files, perform any workarounds, do any exports. It all just works. The funny thing is that here in Fusion, we're seeing the intro hall as the background, even though I started with D'Artanbek. Once inside Fusion, I simply swapped them. So D'Artanbek animation is still the visual aid on the timeline, but in here it's composited over the intro hall. So all of these nodes in between are what change the image in the final output of Fusion. The two viewers can show anything we want within Fusion. We can use these little toggles on the bottom of the nodes, or simply drag the node into either viewer. So let's break down this simple composite. Here we have an image sequence of the intro hall. This is now our background sequence. Next down the line we see D'Artanbek going through a transform node before merging with the intro hall. The only thing the transform node is doing is slightly changing the position of D'Artanbek in the frame because of this next thing in line. We have an overlay of Carrera 8.5 graphical interface with a rectangle mask to make the central area of the image invisible, showing D'Artanbek and the intro hall behind it. I just wanted to add this as an artistic touch. Since D'Artanbek is just walking and talking and he mentions Carrera, I decided later in the project to add the Carrera and DAZ 3D logos to the screen. This helps to illustrate one of the magical features of working with nodes like this. I only have the logos visible for a short time, and instead of animating their visibility separately, I just merged them together before this final merge to have them both use the same visibility merge right here. We can see that I'm also sharing the shadow node that I applied to give them a slight appearance of depth. The transform nodes are just there to position and scale the logos to my liking. Back in the edit room, it looks like this. Not too bad for a first attempt with DaVinci Resolve and Fusion. Next is where I add the Carrera GUI, merge the intro hull onto it, fade off the intro hull image with Rosie's bashful entrance composited over it all. Let's take a look at that in Fusion. See, the default name for media coming into Fusion is media in, and then it gets numbered sequentially. It makes for a much easier workflow if we rename these input nodes. We can either right-click and rename, or just press the F2 button on the keyboard. It won't let us use spaces, so keep that in mind. This one is the background GUI. This one is the intro hull. With the intro hull's merge node selected, see these two little white lines on the timeline? These are keyframes, and in this case, for the blend parameter, which sets its visibility within the composite. By default, we can change parameters over time, and that just remains constant throughout the entire composite. Makes it a lot easier. But see this little white dot beside the parameter? If we click that, the parameter is now animated. Make a change somewhere else, this value will remain where we just made that keyframe. It's that simple. So here is where I leave the blend parameter at 1 or full on, and here's where I drop it down to 0 to make this merge the intro hull frame disappear. That short clip of her peeking out is just long enough to fade out the intro hull before her next entrance, so that now I can just use the GUI background by itself. In this initial Introducing Rosie 5 video, I don't get much more sophisticated than that in editing and compositing. Like I said, just a simple tiptoe into using DaVinci Resolve. Even the animations, simulations, scenes, and renders aren't up to the standards I would normally use for a movie. We'll get deeper into all of that as we progress through the series. We still have a long journey ahead of us since Resolve contains an audio studio called Fairlight Audio and the color page for color grading. I haven't even delved into those yet, and they are both Hollywood movie level software in their own right, yet DaVinci Resolve makes them accessible and easy to use directly within the interface. There's a lot more to explore within Fusion and Edit Page too. Blackmagic Design offers training courses for free, which is what I've used to get this far, and I have links to those on my website, where I will further demonstrate my progress through this wonderful adventure of making my own CGI movies. Once again, thanks for joining me. I'm Dartan Beck, and I'll see you next time.